whoever made the decision for Audi to have that shakedown then, they deserve a raise. Because everyone loves Audi right now, right before we get all of the liveries launched. They're the talk of the town right now. So what did we actually learn from the shakedown? I think it's safe to say they learned a lot more than just if their car went explodey or not. Because, for starters, the engine didn't explode, so you can already give Mattia Binotto a pat on the back. No wonder he looks so chirpy in the team's social media feed. And most importantly, this dispels any concerns that many folks have had since Audi first announced their arrival into Formula One nearly 4 years ago. I, and you, were probably not sure they would even actually make it to 2026, given the lack of communication from Audi, other than just them going, oh no, we still want to be in it, yeah, we're working on it. It just sounded very non-committal, you know, and the fact that Alfa Romeo and then Stake ended up near the back of the grid. But then, thankfully, since Mattia came in, it's all been up, because that was the moment that changed things for me specifically, and why I started to become more and more invested with the team. And look where we are right now. You can almost say I'm the opposite of a fair weather fan. I actually like teams and get behind them when times are rough or unpredictable, so you could call me a rough weather fan. Because with Binotto there, and then bringing in Wheatley and others, it gave the Audi project something that had been lacking when they first announced themselves: a solid foundation. Friday proved that, because the shot of Mattia in that long coat with the initial teamwear designs, going even harder than what Mercedes have come about with Adidas, presents a man not only pleased to see the car return to the pits and not be left stranded on the track, but confidence that the power unit he's been overseeing since he came on board has fulfilled its basic operation: get around a Formula One circuit. Because this feat is such a big deal here, it really should not be ignored. Sauber, now Audi, has managed to implement their own engine for the first time in Hinwil's entire history. They have been powered by Mercedes, Ferrari, BMW, supplying all of the power plants. This is the first time they've made something homegrown. And they got it out there with no reliability dramas whatsoever, managing to plug in their own engine and systems into the hole that Ferrari left when they took all of their toys and went home to Maranello. This was the ending of a partnership, save for the BMW phase, of nearly 30 years between Switzerland and Italy. And their work to provide that compatibility with their own systems has now proven to be a bit of a success, and has given the team a huge advantage over their competitors, who have not even talked about having a little bit of a shakedown before the private pre-season test begins in Barcelona toward the 26th of January. Audi have gotten ahead of the curve by nearly 3 weeks. So no longer are we humming and hawing about Audi, and based on all of the social media interactions I've seen on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, what have you, yes, I am on TikTok, I have noticed that everyone has been gassing them up something chronic, seriously, all about that jacket. It just goes hard, even though there are barely any logos on them, and I think they absolutely nailed their presentation. Seriously, it looked so good, even though many people were too busy deciphering all of the basic doodads and the chassis, and I wasn't really interested in all of that, because that's not really going to carry over to the next test, or Bahrain, or round 1 in Australia. I would call their first foray into constructing their own narrative for 2026 a resounding success, an absolute win. That's one thing we can definitely learn from this shakedown, because we're all googly-eyed at the feat of being the first to venture out there in any capacity, and it was Audi that did it. A steady evolution from their R26 concept launch, which looked nice, but really didn't have anything substantial to show for it other than some pretty colours. So from that event to where we are now, as well as talk of them saying 2030 is the target for regular wins, their political mission has gotten off to a really good start. To look the part, look like an F1 team. Friday being the busiest day for that team since the project began. Because sure, they were telegraphing data to the pit wall, the engineers, to make sure that everything was running tickety-boo. But what they were also doing was telegraphing the vibes and auras to everyone that was paying attention to it. Because the moment that went down, I had to get on the blower up on the ladder to make a short about it. As you may know, I don't do shorts often because it's not really my bag. And the fact that the engineers didn't really have any major problems, or we didn't see any footage of the car breaking down or catching fire or smoke billowing out of it or a crash, they could actually then have those images of it coming back into the pit, everyone standing around it with their hands in their pockets because it must have been probably very cold, looking really, really pleased with themselves. And hey, they've got a functional car. Fantastic. And besides, there are many more people out there who are more technically minded who can do a better job of going into the details than I can. There's Scarbs, there's Dr. Obbs, there are plenty of them to decipher on the socials, so go and have a look at those, including F1 Unchained, by the way. Those can give you all of the details regarding what the concept of the R26 will be in terms of going racing. For me, though, it's all about everything else attached to it. Because ultimately, what we saw right there, thanks to the footage that we could glean, was the car in glorious YouTube 2006 mode, as in 144p being a luxury. But even then, the grainy footage, at least from my perspective and observations, got very little in the manner of ugh, and more along the lines of either ooh or oh, okay. And all of this proves to me that Audi gets Formula One after years of them not getting it. Because the ultimate goal of this was to build up engineering hype, real fundamental hypes around Formula One, and the byproduct of all of this was also to get people hyped up about it in general. That was a little happy accident. This is going to make many people who are engineers out there working for other teams who were interested or tempted by Audi's prospects thinking, oh wow, this is actually serious, and they were able to do all of this, especially them being able to fire up their engine apparently on December the 19th, I think earlier than anyone else. This was before the Christmas break. Then you'd be thinking, wow, they're really serious here. This is enough to probably get a lot more phone calls because we now know it is real. It's not a hypothetical anymore. This could easily have gone so badly for this team that the car wouldn't go out, the car would explode, the car would crash, it would be in a million pieces. We didn't get any of that. Even the grainy footage just showed the car doing its job, going around a track. The mission for Audi right now is to look like an F1 team and just go through the motions without any problems, or as few problems as possible, and really thinking about broadcasting their message cleanly. Because when we saw the silver, red and black motifs of Audi, according to them, they had undertaken very extensive research into how the colours would look on TV with all the broadcasters. Very good. They were looking ahead to the world of F1 and wanting to ensure that their car's colours will stand out properly and look clean, no bleeding, etc. And as I touched upon in my Friday video regarding Zach Brown and what have you, I did bring up the Audi mention that this was also a political move. Yeah, it's not the shouty performance-related kind of politics we're used to from the McLaren Racing CEO, which has turned me off from them, but it is still worth talking about. Because even though you might be thinking, they're talking about colours, mate, what's this got to do with politics? Well, it's choice, and politics, it's all about making choices. It's a choice that Audi made in obsessing over the details and the minutiae that will appeal to the modern-day audiences of Formula One, because yeah, the shakedown going fine, that will appeal the engineering side of Formula One fans, but just everything else, the way the car looked from what we could gather, the team kit, and everyone else representing it, really would appeal to the brand new type of fan, the Netflix fan, the Drive to Survive fan, the, as many gatekeeping fans would say, the casuals. So when you're taking that casual angle, I think what made this hit even harder is what we were coming away from. You know what I mean? Lurid, but somewhat cute and fun green of steak. Then being replaced with just black of Audi with that red and silver. Oh, that hits even harder. Because yeah, we collectively held in our sick when Steak announced themselves as the new sponsor of Sauber. And it would explain why we're shrieking so positively now. Because that green looked loud and a bit chaotic, and it was a little bit different. It was nice to see a different shade of not blue on the grid, but it wasn't exactly a popular sponsor either, especially when they were attached to a team right at the back of the grid. It was different, but it wasn't professional. Although having said that, last year's version was sort of more professional, but it still looked a bit boring. I remember recalling at the launch that this design, last year's one, save for their one-off liveries, which did look kind of cool. It was like somebody getting over a hangover and looking at what they got up to, the pictures of that 24 livery, and thinking, oh my god, did I actually dress like that? In contrast though, psychologically and operationally, that red, silver and black motif of Audi, tick, looks absolutely brilliant. All of this happening during one of their filming days bestowed to them by the FIA and Formula One, that teams can run for up to 200 kilometers for what would be described as, shakedowns and filming days. You know, the kind of stuff. You get the drone just shooting around them, trackside photos and video that brands and creators can use to their whims to actually promote their own cases. That's about 42 laps of the Barcelona circuit, approximately, according to Crash.net. However, we don't know for sure whether or not they'll actually have used all of their allocation in one go. They might decide to use it later on in the season when they've got their car fully decked out in sponsor decals and the livery is shown properly. Everything else was to make sure that the build of the car, the fire-up, the rollout, the return, everything worked like clockwork, and thankfully it did. All of this was a rehearsal for being a works team for the first time since 2009. No low-fuel glory runs here, because quite frankly, them choosing to go first was the glory run in of itself. They didn't really need to do anything else, because we're all starving for F1 content for 2026, and Audi delivered in spades. Because Audi's now got the basics down, so there are fewer hours for the proper test where their hearts are in their mouths, not knowing whether or not the car will actually work. Which is really good, considering this is the first time that Audi has actually had to think like a racing project rather than just a dyno project. Because Binotto, up until now, has been talking about having tense moments when looking at the dyno where the engine has been in situ, not really going anywhere, it shrieking to the heavens, of course, and simulating race runs, but not actually doing them inside of the car. And yes, we can all talk about sounds that we glean from it, some people thinking it still sounds like a vacuum cleaner, but at least I don't think we're going to be getting a 2014 situation where they just sounded horrible, and let's just wait until we actually get professional grade cameras instead of smartphones or meta glasses or what have you. We need to actually wait until we get someone with a boom mic. But hey, what Mattia has been saying and what the team has been able to do has been a real big moment. A tense moment, sure, because as I touched upon earlier, the chief technical officer of Audi has said that they've had big shoes to fill thanks to Ferrari upping sticks and leaving them. And because of it, it meant that the development for the power unit this year had concluded, in his words, and they're already focusing on the ones ready for next year and the year after that. And I remember being a little bit concerned when I first heard about it because it sounded a bit like surrender. With the shakedown though, I do feel a little better. Not that I was expecting wins or anything out of the gate, I'm saying. Because it more reads now, thanks to them actually getting that car out, that they've managed to maybe tick all of the boxes they were hoping for this first season of competition. The 2030 goal looks a little bit more logical. I really don't expect Audi to be winning races left, right and centre. If they were able to get a podium, it'd be through some kind of freak occurrence or something like that, akin to what we saw at Silverstone last year with Sauber. In the rain, Nico coming good in that moment and a strategy call going absolutely, exceedingly well. Audi's goal in their mind is to make sure their car is as reliable as possible, because that might be playing into the main message of 2026, that the team that does the best or stands to do very well will be the team that has as few surprises as possible. So making sure that they understand their engine and have enough parts to survive the season, I would say that's not a bad plan. And especially useful since they are now a works team and they have full control over everything technical regarding the power unit. They don't have to make any compromises here, which is the kind of thing that customers may have to make every now and again. Because you remember 2021 when we saw the likes of Aston Martin's car having that weird bulge on the engine cover? That was down to the fact that that's what they got from Mercedes and they had to work around it. Less efficient. It was a compromise. Here though, Audi, they know everything that there is to know. They don't have to compromise with anything that comes from Ferrari, including legacy issues. But in a way, given their recruitment drive and Binotto having plenty of engineering buddies over at Maranello, it may not matter because they would have the technical know-how from those Ferrari employees to get by anyway, including Lars Schmidt and Wolf Zimmermann. I've talked about that on the channel before, saying that is not something you should be ignoring because Wolf Zimmermann got Ferrari out of a jam in 2015. All of this is a huge gain for Audi's project because Mattia knows them well and would know where to put them to get the best out of them. And also engineers, they're not as showy. They don't up sticks to different teams based on vibes alone. They have to make sure that what they are going into is something that will stand to make their jobs a little bit easier or will have a better return. Or maybe just better prospects in you might be a junior employee at the bigger teams, but when you go to a lower team, you'll have a higher potential job. And the fact they've joined Audi clearly shows they wanted to work with Binotto again after he got ejected from Ferrari, as team principals often do when there's a crisis. And I think one thing that people haven't really been talking about that Mattia has actually been to take over from Ferrari right at the moment that it actually had been purged from Maranello and the Scuderia is the line in the sand between corporate and the racing team. Because in recent times, Audi has actually entrusted Mattia Binotto to do his own thing, and the main office in Neuburg would take a relative backseat, no longer micromanaging, which is exactly what was happening at the beginning of the project. And look what's happening at Ferrari right now. The line in the sand established by Enzo Ferrari in the 60s has been completely wiped from existence thanks to the meddlings of Benedetto Vigna and John Elkann. Enzo's legacy lives on in Mattia. But it's not all about Binotto. I really do want to bring up Wheatley here because he has proven to be an absolute godsend for this team even before the Audi colours have taken over. He's the kind of guy you bring on to stop bleeding points on the Sundays, which Sauber were really doing hard in 2024, and also get you a little bit higher on Saturday because I saw throughout 2025 moments when Jonathan got on the blower to the stewards and managed to, for example, save Bortoletto's bacon and getting him out of Q1 and into Q2 when there was a little bit of a hairy moment. And as we have seen in history, Jonathan's words have been very, very helpful for Red Bull Racing, and I'm leaving it at that. Audi now has access to that huge brain, and on top of that, he has the authority of the team principal. Even more power than he had when he was the sporting director and helping the daily grind of the Red Bull Racing mechanics on the pit wall and at the track. All of those implementations that Red Bull has been fostering since Wheatley was part of the deal has now carried over to Sauber, and that will therefore carry on over to Audi, meaning that with the combination of the things learnt from Ferrari and Red Bull, and not to mention the rivalry between Audi and Mercedes, that German spark could actually cause some sort of a renaissance of maybe getting back finally a German Grand Prix on the calendar. Because I'm not going to lie, I really miss having a German Grand Prix. So you could summarise that with Wheatley on board, the team's become actually ambitious for the first time. Because realistically, after Sauber came back in 2010, they were really just trying to survive, really. BMW left them in the lurch, and now, albeit 17 years later, Audi's come and said, I see that you're in trouble. Now, here's the social media side of the story, which is fascinating, and is a sign of things to come, because, we saw all the spy imagery, the videos and what have you, and even a couple of images that were completely artificially generated. So that's going to teach you something. You've really got to get your spanner out, and you've got to get your foam out if you see an image that looks a little bit questionable. So before you start jumping up and down going, you see that? You see that? You just take a moment to breathe, which is exactly what Audi did. They performed that to perfection. They didn't have to, since this was a private shakedown, but they brought out their own official images anyway. Yeah, they were stylistic and monotone, and the blacks really crushed to preserve the details, but it had the car coming into the pit lane and the crew and drivers there all smiling happily. In short, Audi saw probably the buzz and took back control of the narrative by posting it later on the Friday, preventing the internet from inventing a story, because they managed to project with all of those black and white photos a sign of confidence, and it really helped that the black and white of their team kit, well, it looked exactly the same. Dramatic. All of this feeding into the machine that Audi is more than happy to just let chug along throughout 2026, that yeah, they may not be the fastest, and they didn't make good use of the compression limit trick that Red Bull and Mercedes have been able to pull off, but they can at least just be trundling along happily, reliably, which may make all the difference and giving them an extra place or two in the constructors, because their engine doesn't explode or other bits don't go missing or completely disintegrate. Which admittedly was a problem here or there for Sauber last year, that they had some really good upgrades, but some of them would, completely fall apart. So throughout all of this, they managed to actually manifest a heck of a lot of belief amongst many different parties, and beliefs and gut feelings, that's the kind of thing you just can't buy. And those kind of sentiments are really important going into a rules reset, that we are now starting to believe that, hey, Audi might actually have something here. They may not be a complete clown show here, even though Mattia once worked for Ferrari and he was at one time the embodiment of the Ferrari clown show. Now, no more, because you got to remember, Binotto didn't sign up to be a team principal. He was thrust into that job, and I think he made a pretty good effort of it, considering he wasn't really ambitious for that role. And I just think that the engineers out there are going to be really, really impressed with Audi being able to do all this so quickly and way before anyone else, the established teams. That Audi's got the guts to actually go out and do this, instead of the other teams probably thinking, let's just wait for the test. We don't have to, be silly like this. And an important part of this is that we have got a rules reset, and people do have, in their own comforts of their own computers, a simulation in which they think they will have the edge, but then reality may come and beat them across the head and say, no, you haven't got it, mate. Whereas now, Audi's gotten some of that reality for themselves, and they could take all of that data back into the simulator in their computer systems, and therefore tweak it, so that means they can get even more out of the test than they would have done had they not done it or done it closer to the time. So Audi getting a basic car out there means that reality has arrived much sooner. Like when Brawn got their first shakedown in 2009, then went to the test, just to prove they had a car at all, and then look what they did. So for Audi, this year is all about building a real guide in how to compete in F1, and the test was the opening page. Get the car built, prove that it works, and therefore build up all of the parts and the understandings and the knowledge and the optimization to make sure that that car will continue to run. So you don't just go for glory and make a part that may break suddenly, unexpectedly. They're acting like a team that is expecting to finish races from day one, that their reliability sheet may be one of the best out there. They may not be right at the top of the table or getting into Q3 fairly regularly, but through the laws of attrition, that might not even matter. They'd get points even if they were towards the bottom half of Q2. So I think even now we can all forget the first couple of years of the Audi project where we were wondering whether or not they were going to make it. No, right now they have made it. And Wheatley's holding his own phone for thought high, saying, in his own words, that you'll be looking back in 5 years and looking at our car and saying, yes, that's an Audi. Which may explain why everyone's getting amped up, because they're using the design ethos that Audi's use in other series other than F1. Which tells us they want a stable platform. Avoid any nasty surprises or something that differs from other conceptions and assumptions from series where Audi has gone on to dominate. You can expect the same kind of locking in that we got in other series, which then got us so many trophies. And I think that goodwill and extra belief will be extra helpful for anyone who is au fait with Audi in different disciplines. You'll be thinking, yeah, that looks exactly the same here. So you might be wondering why I'm standing Audi this hard. You might be just thinking that I'm just doing all this in a performative way. I'm not. What I've learnt the last few years, going into my 4th season of covering stuff on YouTube and the internet, is that I like a good underdog story. I like seeing how teams convey themselves, especially when they get onto winning ways. And this is why I've sort of been switched off in terms of McLaren, in that I am pleased that after all of the years of getting behind them and wishing them well, they got there, but then when they did get there, the messaging I got from them was really inconsistent, which made it really hard to be a McLaren fan. And ever since Mattia Binotto took over the reins of Audi, I immediately knew something was up here that meant that they could actually have something pretty good, because Binotto is an engine guy, as we heard from all of the stuff in 2019 regarding the controversies around Ferrari, and then the little chatette they had with the FIA, which meant they had an absolute terrible time in 2020, but they rebounded anyway before the engine freeze. In those couple of seasons, they got back to winning again, instead of going down into a death spiral like they did in the 90s. Mattia orchestrated that, but he got booted out anyway. Is this the start of Mattia's revenge arc? I'm not going to use that trope, it's been overdone now. And what I also like is that we're watching a team learning how to be a proper factory team. Yeah, they used to be one with BMW, but that was a long time ago. Many who worked there then aren't working at Hindle now. And all this under a regulation reset and having a level head, whilst also managing the expectations of a huge car maker. Watching this creation come alive for the first time after they made their announcement with that little bit of a show car, and us cycling that image time and time again. And just look at what the partnership of Wheatley and Binotto and all of the other hires they brought on since the takeover and the backing away of corporate HR Audi. They've been able to reinvigorate a veteran in Nico Hülkenberg and give him his first ever podium, firing him up even more and absolutely instilling confidence in the German. And then look at Gabriele Bortoleto, my other boy in Formula One. At the beginning of 2025, the biggest story surrounding him was all of the vitriol pointed in his direction for daring to take the number 5 away from Sebastian Vettel. That's all what people cared about. Apart from that, nobody really knew much about Gabi. Similar in how not many people knew about Isaac Hadjar until he did what he did throughout the season, became one of the most impressive rookies on the calendar. Bortoleto's star didn't rise quite as highly because he was in a Sauber. But then again, he had moments where you're thinking, oh, you did that in a Sauber? Including matching Hülkenberg in qualifying. Those two working together harmoniously alongside Jonathan and Mattia, it's a dream team. It may not be a super team, but it's a dream team in the midfield in my book. So yeah, I'm not expecting a win anytime soon, but this year can still be exciting with them having clean race after clean race. Every boring weekend without a big failure is great news for them, especially going into next year, 2027. As far as I'm concerned, every time we see that Audi car go past and it's just doing its thing and there are no dramas surrounding it, then it's done its purpose. It's just gone out there and gotten the miles under its belt. They actually have commitment, and this establishment of the division has been crucial. It's served Ferrari well for decades, and it may serve Audi for at least a decade. Because look at what's happened in the last few days. Everyone is talking about Audi in a really positive way. That people are taking all of this and are thinking, hey, these cars are going to look pretty good next year. Audi has managed to do an impressive job, and the Formula One execs might be thanking Audi from the heavens. No wonder they've been championing this arrival into the sport. F1 has loved Audi, and they now love them even more. Because we're all fired up for 2026 again. We were all worried about active aero and electricity getting in the way of the show, but now we look at the cars and go, ooh, pretty. And red Audi rings, ooh, that's good. You see, positive chatter. And that's what Formula One needs right now. Thank you, Audi. And positive chatter is something you can find right here in this video that you can go and watch right now. I'll see you over there.